Hey guys, welcome back to more Entitled Parents Stories. In this video, my parents spent years telling me I was a disappointment, 30, single and child-free with 5 cats. They treated me like the family failure while I was secretly building a multi-million-dollar empire. But when they found out about my wealth, they pulled the most disgusting scam I've ever seen. Let's dive right into the XXL story. And the title story is titled, Parents Mocked Me for Being 30 Years Old, Child-Free and Having 5 Cats, Unaware That I'm a Millionaire. Before we really get into any of this, I just want to say that even though I have strong opinions about how I live my life and the pressure I've endured to pursue other goals, I don't have anything against people who want to spend their time and money differently than I do. As long as you're not hurting anyone, go for it, man. It's not like life's gonna make it easier if you start later on doing what you actually want to do. With that being said though, I really did not like the idea of having kids or living a traditional lifestyle like my parents did, even now at 30 years old. It wasn't that I thought I wouldn't be able to raise a kid or manage a proper marriage, I just didn't think it was for me. I never brought that up for the first 18 years of my life, and for good reason. My parents just always had this idea of me growing up like the rest of my siblings, getting a stable job for a 9-to-5, getting married to someone who shared their values, and raising a family. I'm not positive that it was an expand the bloodline reason for wanting grandkids, but there were times that it was definitely hinted at. There was also the issue of me not being the most social guy. And sure, I had a close friend group I would sometimes game with or go out for drinks, but I was never actively seeking out parties to go to during college or anything. I was so stressed about getting a job after figuring out how the job market works way too late, and was spending almost all of my time either studying or working a part-time job. Weirdly though, I didn't get that much attention about how I was doing in education. I guess my parents just ran out of interest by the time their 3rd kid went to get a higher education. My older brother had made his way through college before I'd even finished high school, and now he was working for a corporate job after a successful internship. My sister also completed college, but she decided to start her own business with her fiancé, who's actually a really nice guy and wants to support her ideas. I guess with a reputation like that for your first 2 kids, it didn't matter what happened to the 3rd, right? Well, during the period when I was distant from my family to focus on my career, I started working with a small team of guys who knew software development as much as I did. We made several projects, most of them being free mobile games that didn't perform too well because we had no idea what we were doing. For a minute, I was questioning what I was doing and if I should have done something different. But after a few more pushes and a full 3 months of coding, designing and refining, we had created a pretty functional mobile app. Just in case there's no advertising allowed here, I won't say what it is. As the leader of the team, I was the face of the app and with my team's permission decided that we needed to expand if this was truly gonna work. After we saw a huge rush to our app after a certain pandemic, our sales went way up. We were gaining customers at a rate that we were just too small to handle all by ourselves, so we made the decision to look for a buyer. And wouldn't you know it, a particularly large entity was interested in buying it for millions of dollars. We all felt like we were dreaming when we accepted the deal. After we split the money 3 ways plus the small percentage of the company we still technically owned, we each had a few $1,000,000 all to ourselves. It was completely unlike anything I imagined my life would be this early in. I kept the success quiet for a few reasons. One, I didn't want to put a lot of pressure on myself and get too cocky. I wanted to keep my nice but not too nice apartment since I truly felt like it was home to me and not have anyone push me to get a house I would later on regret. 2, I really didn't want to become what my siblings were to my parents. Like I said before, they really didn't pay me much attention, and that was mainly because they had 2 other kids to shower with praise. Every time I would come home to visit, no matter how I was doing or how much I was working, it was always, "When are you gonna get a real job?" Or "Why can't you find a nice girl to settle down with? Your sister's already engaged." Stuff like that. I was never in the mood for whatever they had to say about me, and I just feel like telling them I had made it somewhere in life would either end in some other form of mockery or they would pretend to finally like me. The only thing they knew about me really was that I lived in an apartment with my 5 rescue cats. All of them are trained, well-behaved companions that have made everything so much easier. And by the way guys, just to quickly interject here, if you want to feel happy and sad at the same time, then I have the perfect picture for you. This is really a tearjerker for me. The picture says, your family does not need to be blood related, they don't even need to be human. And well, who can disagree with that? Anyway, not only do they motivate me to work extra hard to be able to look after them, but it feels so good knowing I saved lives that were likely just doomed if I had left them in the shelters they came from. To this day, there's this small pain in the back of my mind telling me that no matter what I do, there will always be more animals needlessly suffering just because no one can find a home for them. It gets me down sometimes, but it's also been the fuel I needed to expand on my dream plans, the number one being the idea of opening a new cat rescue center. I debated going to vet school but decided it was too depressing of an environment and that I needed a backup job that I could have a bit more wiggle room in. So my parents, without actually asking me about my life of course, decided to label me as the lonely cat guy. The outcast of the rich, successful family, if you will. And no, we are not insanely wealthy, but my parents sure love to act like it. They go on vacations and spend lots of money on a dime, even though neither of them work jobs that pay enough for them to be constantly spending that much. They are fine in terms of income and insurance, but they have this rich complex that demands they push down anyone they think is less than them. When I heard we were having another family reunion, I almost just cancelled. I knew I had an obligation to be there for my family, and I had a few cool cousins that I like to catch up with, but I knew the real reason that I was being invited. Every time we did something like this, there would be at least 30 minutes dedicated to berating me and my lifestyle in front of the whole family. My parents are not the only ones who have very traditional values, and again, I've never said I have a problem with that, but my relatives are a bit more accepting. This time it was definitely the worst. It was about 5 months after I closed the deal with the tech company and had started investing some of my money, as well as securing a job that would allow me to build off one of my investment companies. No one at the reunion knew this, and I decided that I wouldn't bring it up. So again, I was subject to the usual torment. My mom told me all about how excited she was for my brother's new job and my sister's marriage, and that once again I was wasting my life and was just the bad apple. My dad also joined in, saying that by the time he was my age, he was working 8 hours a day and had a serious girlfriend, not a bunch of cats. Some of my relatives who happened to be listening just awkwardly laughed with my parents. I could tell they knew this was really weird. Even during dinner, when no one was even asking about me, my parents again brought up the fact that I was wasting my life on cats and had no future that seemed worth it. And by the way guys, by the minute I hate these parents more and more. These have to be the most unlikable people I've ever read about. Anyway, there was one other person, my aunt, who asked if I had plans to have kids later down the line, since it was getting late and that cats could never replace kids. That's a lie. I tried to be respectful and said I'm sure kids are really good for people to have, but that I just did not have any plans for it, especially since I was not even in a relationship. That gave my mom another opportunity to dig at the fact that I was single and just not trying hard enough. After dinner, I left. I was done. There was nothing else I wanted to do there. Even the people who seemed okay with me being there had no interest in defending me, and my siblings sure were not gonna try and fight their parents. They were used to it too. The next afternoon, I got a call from my parents. I picked up, I'm not sure why. They initially started off by apologizing for what had happened at the reunion, and that they wanted me to understand that they would never want to hurt me. I, of course, did not buy it for a second. As I continued to let them talk, it slowly descended into a pity talk about how they just wanted the best for me and that I needed to rethink my life because the one I was living apparently was not good enough for me or my family. What really hurt is that I genuinely think they meant that. They didn't just want me to be an embarrassment to myself, they really thought I was wasting my life. As someone who already had self-esteem issues, that was such a hard thing to hear directly for the first time. It was hard to keep talking. They went on and on about how I just needed therapy so I could live a better life and not be so obsessed with cats. Said no one ever. Out of everything, weirdly, the cats were the #1 reason they brought up for me needing to change. That was all that happened before I just told them to have a nice day. I then temporarily blocked their numbers. And yeah guys, at this point I would definitely go no contact with the entire family, that's for sure. And by the way, if you've watched until here and love cats, please don't forget to like the video because that would help me tremendously and ensure that I can make enough money on YouTube to take care of my super spoiled 2 cats. Anyway, work was stressful and one of my cats was sick at the time. He's doing better, don't worry. I did not need their added nonsense. For the next patch of time, maybe a couple of weeks, I didn't hear from them. In fact, I did not hear from anyone in my direct family. It was not like my siblings and I talked much anyway, but something just felt off. Well, in the background, something did happen. My brother called me and asked if the tech thing was legit. I asked about how he knew, and he said something about someone in the family seeing my face on one of the company flyers. I still don't know what that means since we don't really do those, but the details don't really matter. What did matter was what he told me after, which was that my parents have been going crazy ever since they found out and have been trying to contact me. I can only assume that the entire family knew about my wealth at this point, and there was nothing I could really do about it. I felt like it was not gonna be a big deal, but sure enough, my parents made it onto one. I then quietly unblocked their numbers and just waited to see when the next time they would call would be. It ended up being the next day. My mom, who was in tears, called me when I was right about to go to work. She sobbed about how hurt she was that I had the answer to their medical problems in my pocket the whole time, and that I did not love my parents and therefore wanted them to die. Obviously, I needed time to process all of that. The first question I asked was what medical problems she was talking about. As far as I knew, my parents were perfectly healthy, and if they were sick enough to need my money for some kind of treatment, they absolutely would have brought it up at the party. At the very least, it would be an opportunity for them to further push me over the edge. Everything about what she had said in about 2 sentences was suspicious. She said that she and my dad were getting older and having complications that their insurance could not cover. Trust me, I tried to get more details about this illness, but to this day, I don't know what it was supposed to be. All I knew was that I was getting blamed for not providing them with the money to get it treated, and that I was a terrible son in general for not sharing an important detail about my life. After a few minutes of explaining exactly how insane she sounded to be talking to me right after I told her I had money, I asked how much she actually wanted from the treatment. If it were like a couple $100, I could at least get them to shut up and they wouldn't have this move to play again. Plus, I wouldn't really notice the money missing. I was not stupid. I knew that this was just because they were after my money. Probably a new cruise they wanted to go on or something like that. She then told me that she wanted $500k to pay for everything. She also said that considering everything, it was barely enough to cover everything and that this was a favor I owed them for not telling them about my money earlier. Then it was more crying about how she raised me and didn't want to lose her son because he was refusing to give his poor frail mom some petty cash and was calling her crazy instead. I then hung up the phone and called my brother. Nothing she had just said was gonna make any sense if she elaborated, and I didn't want to make anything worse. I needed to hear from someone else that I was not losing my mind here, and when I told him about our parents, he was just as baffled about them being sick as I was. He had never heard about it, and when he texted mom if she was okay, she apparently just texted back that she was stressed out about me hurting her. It's good that I reached my brother before she did, because I at least had time to explain everything, so in conclusion, we had no idea what was going on. I thought hanging up on her would at least give me a minute without them bothering me, but I should have known that they were persistent. The next day, when I went into work, they were in the office, standing at the front desk with an expression like I had just murdered their family. I still don't know how they got in or where they found the actual building I was in. I tried asking around, but it's impossible that someone from the family saw me go in or something like that, who knows? I asked what's going on, and my dad snapped at me and told me that I knew what I was doing. My mom proceeded to start crying again, asking how I could be so cruel and hide my life from them when they had been the ones to lead me down this path. The whole moment seemed like some kind of sitcom scene, and even the receptionist was just awkwardly shifting around and sometimes glancing over when my parents started saying something crazy. Above all else, it was just humiliating. I'm not sure about anyone else, but if I saw a co-worker come in to see their parents talking about how they were cut off because he didn't want to pay their medical bills they desperately needed, I would at least consider the idea that the parents were maybe good people. Sometimes my parents could pull that off. My mom handed me a few documents that outlined their medical diagnosis and pleaded that I do the bare minimum by just covering them. The text was about size 5 and filled to the brim with random signatures and dates, none of which gave me a concrete idea of what they'd been diagnosed with. If I were going to try and pull something like this off with this much money at stake, I would at least do research on one disease that I could fake. They were not even trying to pretend to look sick. The begging was honestly pathetic. They said that they would be in contact and that I needed to make a decision by tonight about what I was going to do, and then promptly left downstairs. They did not let me talk. It was not until later that I found out that on their way down, they stopped by some of the offices, some of them having nothing to do with me, and told workers about what was going on in their building and that they needed to do something if they wanted the corruption to stop or something like that. Luckily, I was able to clear that up super quickly, and they just happened to have no evidence to share whatsoever, so it was just another weird attempt to control people and tell everyone how much they hated me. I'm sure they looked insane doing it. Meanwhile though, I was a bit stressed about all the documents. For a minute I thought that maybe I was being stupid and my parents were just too nervous to tell me about their diagnosis and just wanted their best chance at getting funded. There's still this twinge of guilt I feel when I think about them. Well, after about 30 seconds of research though, I concluded that the medical documents had two obvious issues. 1. Our last name was misspelled. 2. The clinic didn't exist. What I think happened was my parents just went online, went to Google Images, picked out a random clinic logo that looked convincing enough, and just slapped it onto a Word document that they then printed out. After doing some extra digging, I found out that the clinic used to be open near our town a while ago, but it had been almost a decade since they changed names and closed their nearest location. The next closest one was 2 states away. Honestly, it was such a breath of fresh air to have such idiotic parents. I knew them well, they probably wouldn't back down if I was not really gonna fight back or use any evidence that was good enough for them, so they probably would have tried to use the legal system to their advantage somehow. Luckily though, they had handed me the answer to shutting their whole operation down. So the first thing I did after that was get my lawyer to look over the documents as well as just tell him the situation about how I owed my parents a ridiculous amount of money and that they were now coming to my workspace to harass me about it. We decided to send a cease and desist letter to my parents with the threat of harassment charges. I also did something I should have done a while ago and had the building security ban my parents from even entering. As soon as they got the letter, I got an endless string of voicemail demanding I explain what was going on, but I was not gonna let them have any more info. They had enough already. I deleted all my contacts with them, including their numbers, and of course I still had my siblings' numbers, and that's where I was able to exchange information with them about how things were working out. It was mainly a back and forth between me and my oldest brother, who was still on relatively good terms with my parents but understood exactly why I did what I did. Apparently, without that promised money, my parents didn't have enough savings to afford the house and car payments they had. They still had money, but they definitely weren't making enough to afford their dream lifestyle that they thought I was going to hand them over. So to save up money, they moved in with my brother. He was not very happy about it, and for a couple of months he told me about how much space they took up and how they were treating him like he was still a kid. And not the only guy who had enough patience to take care of them. Well, eventually though, even his patience ran out. After a couple months, he kicked our parents out. I came over to his house a bit after that so we could talk, and it was rough. He loved our parents, he really did, and he wanted to have a complete family that could come together for the holidays and still make good memories with. And by the way guys, from everything you have heard about this family so far, would you really want to celebrate Christmas with these kinds of parents? Honestly, I would rather celebrate with the 5 cats, but maybe that's just me. Even when he was aware of how I was being treated and trying to help me, there was always this part of him that wanted to deny everything. I told him I was proud of the decision he made and that if our parents really wanted to even attempt to fix things, they would act like adults and come back to talk to him and my sister. Other than that, things were looking up for all of us. My sister was still hard at work but finally set a date for her marriage, which is next month from the day I post this, and I didn't ask her if my parents were invited. Honestly, I'd rather just have a good time and avoid them if they show up rather than possibly ruining my sister's big day. At the very least, the bond between me and my siblings got better. As for me, I actually got really motivated to work. Also, my cats were doing great and the business was stable with more than enough income to support us all, so I decided to focus on more my side projects that I'd been too stressed to put more thought into. There was really only one that I knew could cost a lot to get started, but with all of my savings I did not hesitate with the investment. So I finally started the Cat Rescue Foundation and spent every day for the next few months working to ensure that I was providing the highest standards for a place like this as possible. I actually almost cried when the first location was done. We had fully furnished cages, blankets, an abundance of food, and most importantly, a local vet had decided to sponsor us. The people there are basically the best people I've ever met. They constantly donate, and because of us, they've attracted a lot more attention and have been able to upgrade their space to help even more animals. I'd found my family through my staff and volunteers, and we have helped so many cats find homes, especially those that we have saved from cat mills that would have been put down without us. We also started a social media page where we advertise our newest additions and give the lesser known or wanted breeds a chance to shine. Everything we do, the number one priority is to help the cats, and I've made sure that everyone who helps is compensated well. We plan to expand the business to more states in the coming years as well, especially with all the attention we've drawn from fellow cat lovers. It's just such a fulfilling way that I've found to live my life. I know people in the comments will ask, so yeah, I've heard about my parents since they moved out of my brother's place. When I was at my sister's house for a small get-together, one of his friends said that he thought he saw them in one of the apartment complexes near where he lives. My siblings and I obviously asked for more info, and he actually had a picture of them going into their room. They were not miserable looking, but you could tell they were not having a good time. And no, they are not at risk of being homeless or anything. Again, they have money to support themselves for a very long time, they just waste it so easily and expect the world to bend the way they need it to when their stupidity catches up to them. As far as I know, my siblings have limited their contact as well, but they have not fully cut them off yet. The one time I asked my sister if they had anything to say about me, she just told me the truth about how they still blame me, but she still tries to say that they're probably just stressed and don't realize how they were treating me. I don't blame my sister for not getting it yet, but at least she actually supports me and is starting to understand that maybe we did not have the best parents. Honestly, I gave up hope for them a while ago. If money wasn't in the picture, I don't think they have that parental bond that most parents have towards their children, even for the ones they actually like. My siblings were more like trophies to show off, not people to be genuinely proud of. Do I think their new life will make them come to terms with their mistakes? Probably not, but I don't care. At the very least, they don't like my cats, so I don't like them in return. And yeah guys, definitely thumbs up for that last sentence. OP is 100% right. And by the way, if you're also a cat lover, let me know in the comments what kind of cat you have. And before we end the video, we will read one last funny story from r/PettyRevenge, and also as an excuse to show you some cat videos. This one is titled, "She wanted credit for my work, so I gave it to her." There is this coworker in my department who's notorious for swooping in last minute and polishing up projects just before deadlines and then taking all the credit when presenting them to the leadership. It happened to me one too many times. I did the bulk of a project, research, design, data analysis, the works, and she added a few bullet points to the summary slide and slapped her name on the email to the executive, so for the next big assignment, I let her do it again. I sent her my unfinished draft saying I was running behind and needed help, so she jumped at the chance and I completely stepped back and gave her all the credit, even encouraged it, except I knew the data was flawed. On purpose, nothing crazy, just enough to collapse under real scrutiny. She then presented it with pride at the all hands. The department had asked one question she couldn't answer, then pulled up the source data and the loopholes became obvious. She stumbled, flustered and ended the meeting early, saying she would circle back. Later that week, I was asked to quietly step in and fix the problem. No more stolen credit since then, and she still avoids eye contact. And yeah guys, thank you so much for listening. I will see you again tomorrow.